The house of the alferez stood out like a dark stain amidst the town's festive atmosphere. Windows closed tight, no lanterns or banners adorned its gloomy facade. Inside, Doña Consolacion dozed on a sofa, her appearance a stark contrast to the celebration outside. Dressed in a faded blue flannel shirt and a worn skirt that revealed her thin, shaking legs, she looked more like a vagrant than the wife of a high-ranking official. Her tangled hair escaped from beneath a poorly tied handkerchief, and a thick cigar protruded from her purple lips. Occasionally, she'd open her eyes and puff out a cloud of smoke, her gaze unfocused and bitter. That morning, her husband had forbidden her from attending Mass. "You're not going out looking like that," he had growled. "I won't have you embarrassing me in front of the whole town and visitors from the capital." This command had infuriated Doña Consolacion, who considered herself far more attractive and better dressed than the likes of Maria Clara. "What do you mean?" she had shrieked. "I'm beautiful. I dress better than any of those simple town girls." The alferez had threatened her then, his face red with anger. "Either shut up or I'll kick you back to your damned town," he roared. Now, as the day wore on, Doña Consolacion's dark mood festered. She prowled the house like a caged animal, her glare sending servants scurrying out of her path. With her husband out, her agitation grew. She barked orders at the few unfortunate souls who crossed her path. "Close all the windows," she commanded. "Light the lamps. I don't want to hear their stupid celebrations." Meanwhile, in the barracks, Sisa sat quietly on a bench. Arrested days earlier for disturbing the peace, the poor madwoman had spent nights in the cold, hard cell. The alferez, not wanting to deal with her, had ordered the soldiers to treat her kindly and give her food. As evening fell, Sisa began to sing softly, her sweet voice carrying melodies from her youth. The soldiers fell silent, memories of their own pasts stirred by her song. The haunting tune drifted through the air, eventually reaching Doña Consolacion's ears. Intrigued by the sound, Doña Consolacion ordered a servant, "Bring that singer to me immediately." When Sisa arrived, she seemed unaware of her surroundings, her eyes vacant and unfocused. This lack of acknowledgement infuriated Doña Consolacion, who attempted to intimidate Sisa by speaking in broken Tagalog. "You crazy woman, look at me when I speak," she barked. Sisa remained unresponsive, not understanding the mangled Tagalog. This pleased Doña Consolacion, who prided herself on her inability to speak the local language properly. In her mind, this made her superior, more Spanish. The roots of Doña Consolacion's poor language skills traced back to the early days of her marriage. As a young bride, she had struggled to pronounce Filipinas correctly, leading to heated arguments with her husband. "Say Filipinas, woman," he had shouted, slapping her head. "Don't be stupid. It's named after King Felipe." These lessons often ended in physical fights, with both of them bruised and bloodied. Over time, Doña Consolacion's ability to communicate deteriorated further. She relied increasingly on gestures and violence to make herself understood. Now, facing the silent Sisa, Doña Consolacion felt a familiar rage building. She grabbed her husband's whip and sneered at the madwoman. "Sing," she commanded in Spanish. When Sisa didn't respond, she repeated the order in her fractured Tagalog. "You, sing now." To her surprise, Sisa understood this command and began to sing the Song of the Night. The melancholy lyrics about faded flowers and solitary nightbirds touched something in Doña Consolacion's hardened heart. As she listened, her expression softened. The song spoke of sadness and loneliness, feelings she knew all too well but had buried deep inside. Suddenly overcome with emotion, she shouted in perfect Tagalog, "Stop! Don't sing anymore. Those verses hurt me." A servant boy, witnessing this, exclaimed in shock, "Abba, she speaks Tagalog!" Realizing her slip, Doña Consolacion's embarrassment quickly turned to rage. She dismissed the boy angrily, slamming the door behind him. Turning back to Sisa, she ordered, "Dance! Dance now!" When Sisa didn't move, Doña Consolacion began to jump around herself, demonstrating what she wanted. Like this, you stupid woman. Dance! Sisa watched with curiosity, a faint smile on her lips. This only enraged Doña Consolacion further. She grabbed the whip and began lashing at Sisa's feet. "Dance, damn you!" she screamed, her strikes becoming harder and more frequent. Sisa cried out in pain, trying to protect herself with her hands. But Doña Consolacion was relentless. She tore at Sisa's clothes, drawing blood with her vicious strikes. The sight of blood seemed to awaken something primal in Doña Consolacion. Her eyes gleamed with cruel excitement as she forced Sisa to move, whipping her all the while. "That's it!" she cackled. "Dance for me, you mad dog!" Sisa, finally understanding what was wanted, began to move her arms awkwardly. Doña Consolacion's face twisted into a satisfied smirk, reveling in her power over the helpless woman. The violent scene was interrupted by the sudden return of the alferez. He kicked open the door, his face pale with anger as he took in the sight before him. "What the hell is going on here?" he roared. Doña Consolacion merely smiled at him, defiant and unrepentant. The alferez gently stopped Sisa from dancing, and she collapsed to the floor, her body marked with welts and blood. Turning to a servant, the alferez ordered, "Take care of this woman. Clean her up and give her food and a bed. Tomorrow she goes to Señor Ibarra's house." Once they were alone, the alferez confronted his wife. He held up a crumpled letter, his hand shaking with rage. "Did you write this?" he demanded. "Accusing me of taking bribes to allow gambling? Are you trying to ruin me?" Doña Consolacion laughed mockingly. "What if I did? What are you going to do about it, you coward?" "I ought to kill you for this," the alferez shouted, his fists clenched. "Go ahead and try," she taunted. "You don't have the guts." The alferez, losing control, grabbed a plate from the table and hurled it at her head. Doña Consolacion ducked, and the plate shattered against the wall. A cup and saucer quickly followed, meeting the same fate. "Is that the best you can do?" she sneered, then spat in his face. Roaring with rage, the alferez lunged at her. But Doña Consolacion was quicker. She lashed out with the whip, catching him across the face before darting into the next room. She slammed the door shut, the sound of furniture being dragged indicating she was barricading herself in. The alferez pounded on the door, cursing and threatening. "Open this door, you witch!" he bellowed. "I'll break your head open!" From inside, Doña Consolacion's voice rang out, "Don't you dare come in here, I'll shoot you if you try." Their fight continued, with insults and threats hurled back and forth. Eventually, the alferez's rage seemed to subside. He made a show of leaving, slamming the front door loudly. But it was a ruse. He crept back in quietly, removing his shoes to muffle his footsteps. Then he waited patiently outside the room where his wife had barricaded herself. After a while, Doña Consolacion called out, "Boy, has your master really gone?" The servant, seeing the alferez's signal, replied, "Yes, señora, he's gone out." Believing she was safe, Doña Consolacion began to remove the furniture blocking the door. As she opened it slightly, the alferez sprang into action. He burst into the room, and the sounds of a violent struggle ensued. Yells, thuds, and the crash of breaking furniture echoed through the house, punctuated by curses and cries of pain. As the servant boy left the house, the cook gave him a knowing look. "You'll pay for lying to the señora," she warned. The boy shrugged. "Me? The whole town will pay for this. She only asked if he went out, not if he came back in." As night fell on the town, the sounds of celebration outside contrasted sharply with the violence within the alferez's home. The dysfunctional and abusive relationship between the alferez and Doña Consolacion, as well as their cruelty towards others like Sisa, painted a grim picture of the corruption and brutality present in the colonial administration of the Philippines.